Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Writers, Artists, and Readers Guild. I am, as always, your host, Chris Mary Holtzman, and it's been quite a while since we spoke. Last time was the interview with Peter Beagle, and it felt like I was kind of hinting at some more stuff coming, lots of stuff coming. And that just hasn't panned out. There's been a lot of different things that I've been up to. I've been launching a new website called Wisconsin Noir, uh, whereas I'm going to place some of my stories or my fiction that I work on set in Wisconsin. I've been working on a lot of other stuff too, completing one of my stories, my novels. So there's been a lot going on. Now, though, we're talking to Dan Fogler, who is releasing a new graphic novel called Brooklyn Gladiator. We talk about that. We talk about his inspiration. We talk about his earlier works, Moon Lake, and stuff like that. It's a really fun interview, so stick around and listen to it. And on the other side, I'll just, say goodbye, wrap it up, and stuff like that. So, for now, let's get on with the interview.
Yeah, do your thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, as I said, you've probably been doing a lot of press lately, or?
Yeah, man, it's absolutely. It's starting to heat up. We got Brooklyn Gladiator coming out April 11th, and then Fantastic Beasts 2 is coming out. So there's just a ton of press. We just had the trailer come out today, which is very exciting for the second movie. So yeah, fielding a lot of calls and things are percolating.
It's good. So yeah, I'd like to focus on Brooklyn Gladiator, obviously, because that feels like it's closest in the future of what's coming out.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, and I finished the review copy that was sent out, and I just got to say that it's kind of like it's up my alley. Absolutely,
Oh, good.
I love the mixture of science fiction, a little noir, even a little, the whole with the altered planes of existence and stuff like that. It's just kind of it's a nice mix of things.
Very good. Good. Glad you're digging it.
Yeah, so I was kind of interested in where does a story like that come from the beginning? I know you kind of talk about it in the introduction, but I'd just like to pick your brain a little bit about how the story developed, since there's so many different layers to it.
Right. Okay, well, it started, I guess, back in early 2000, and I was in New York when 9/11 happened, and it was extremely shocking to my system, and it led me down this rabbit hole of trying to figure out, what's really going on, why are we going into, war, and why, what for, and you go down. I went down. You go on the internet, you research this stuff, and it just it opens up more and more and more rabbit holes. So
Yeah.
I basically said to myself, what if there was a universe where all of these conspiracy theories were true? Just that's the rules. Anything goes, basically. And I was when I was in high school, I read 1984, and that really stuck in my head as far as a scary possible future that we can go down if we're not too careful. And here we are today. Everyone with their little screens and staring at their little screens and cut off from reality, tweeting their short speak, and it just there's a lot of echoes to 1984, and I thought, what would that look like in a future dystopia that's not too far away from where we are right now.
Yeah.
So I chose 2033, which is far enough away, but it's not too far away. And we're living in a world where all the rights have been taken away, and most of the population is drugged up on this super drug, and they're totally apathetic, and the wall is being built, and it's been being built so high that it actually wraps around the entirety of America, and outside of the walls is chaos in World War III, and it's at the doorstep, and the citizens inside have no clue. And John Miller, the hero, is kind of like the Luke Skywalker or the Neo, who he's this guy who he rejects all the technology. He rejects the mind-numbing population controlling drugs, and he tries desperately to get the hell out of New York to get some sense of reality, and he has these I say Luke Skywalker because he has these blossoming psychic abilities.
Mm-hmm.
He's this like a death cage match fighter, and that's how he makes his living. And on the surface, he seems like this, he's basically a modern Robin Hood who's manipulating the system. He's basically a criminal, who deals with people with his fists, and but as the psychic energy starts to build in him, he starts to transform. And at first, he uses it in his dreams and on the astral plane. He's able to go out where there's a curfew and everybody has to be in. He goes out in his dreams and sends his astral form and finds all the nooks and crannies in the city where he can operate and avoid cameras, and he is able to make a living that way as well. And so as this ability grows and grows, he becomes less of a criminal and more of like a Jedi, more of a prophet, more of a warrior, a spiritual warrior. And that's at the core of this story.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's very interesting. Did you feel like as the story progressed, because, I mean, I understand, and this is very much like a podcast for people who are creative. So usually I talk to and interview people about the creative process and like how things are built up so that other people might learn from it.
Right.
But like when it first started out, and it started out, and it seems like 9/11 was like a divider for a lot of people. A lot of people took a lot of inspiration from that event. A lot of creative people, just kind of like how the First World War, the Second World War sparked a lot of creativity, especially when it comes to science fiction.
That's our modern Pearl Harbor, basically.
Yeah. So as we come closer to where we are now and the release of Brooklyn Gladiator, did you feel like just more and more stuff started falling into place? Well, I could use this. This crazy thing is happening right now. Why don't I just incorporate that? Or
as I got closer and closer to, the idea germinated back in the early 2000s, and I spent all that time researching, and then when I really the formula started to come together, and I started writing it. It was during the presidential elections, and the idea to me that Trump would become president, it seemed to me like that would be the premise of a science fiction movie. Because it just sounds like The Running Man to me or something, where the madman billionaire gains control of the country and then turns everything into like a reality game show for his sick pleasure. It kind of seems like that's what's happening now. It's just we crossed over from reality, from the real to the surreal for me. We suddenly, now that he is president, everything seems so volatile. It feels like anything could happen. It feels like World War III could break out. It feels like, right? I mean, it's just like, it's just, and everyone is kind of, they were on the edge of their seats, waiting to see what this maniac would do next. But it's people are becoming complacent, apathetic. They're numb to it, and that is the seeds of Brooklyn Gladiator right there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's you can imagine. I mean, just it feels like the Wild West out in America right now. Literally, bullets flying, and I think that it's just really important to comment on that as artists, to, just like Shakespeare said, you put a mirror up to society, you put a mirror up to reality, and you can make people laugh, question it. That's our job. And so Brooklyn Gladiator is, the creation of Brooklyn Gladiator 2033 could be the butterfly effect of what is happening today.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. I think of like Alan Moore when he talked about V for Vendetta, and the germ for V for Vendetta was, what if there were cameras all over England, and then all of a sudden there's cameras all over England. Like his reality was what he had imagined came true. And it feels it's the same way. Have you taken a lot of inspiration from comic book creators like Alan Moore, or is it strictly Orwellian?
Well, he is. My introduction to Alan Moore was Watchmen, and that was pretty genius. The ending of that, where you have the factions who are controlling the world. The smartest man in the world creates the plan for peace, for everyone to come together, because this formulated outside force that no one could have predicted came in and decimated the population, and now we all have to bond together. And it was like, you can kind of hear the echo of Reagan, What if there was what if there was an outside force, aliens that came out of nowhere, when he's talking about Star Wars, or his personal Star Wars, and wouldn't we all have to join together and become brother and sisters, and the borders wouldn't mean anything? It's like that's echoing the reality of the reality of the 80s. That was him saying, "Hey guys, maybe we should watch out for this kind of activity. Maybe we should watch out for people starting wars and for the quote unquote benefit of mankind. That kind of thing." And that really is very interesting to me. I think it's. He also talks about it in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
He knows what's up, and so yes, I think that Moore has been a major influence, and I think that it's people like that and artists like that who even there are major artists out there like the same messages in Star Wars.
Yeah.
You have all the stormtroopers on our side, and then one day, Code 66, everything changes.
Yeah.
It's a similar thing that happens in Brooklyn Gladiator, where power changes hands, and the next thing you know, you're in prison. It's that kind of thing, and it happens slowly, methodically, to the point where no one realizes it's happening. That's the echo in Brooklyn Gladiator, and I'm definitely paying homage to all of these guys who are trying to warn us and say, it's really important for us to not put our heads in the sand, to really question the authority, because even if 50% of the time they're not working for us in our favor, that's 50% too much.
Mm-hmm. No, that's I when I read it, because I teach a like literature class to kids or to students at the high school level. We often talk about literary sociology and what you said about putting up a mirror to the world.
Yeah.
And I think Brooklyn Gladiator does that very well, and makes me think of so many other artists who've done similar things. I'm reminded of not only Alan Moore, but also Jeff Noon. I don't know how familiar you are with his work. He was more active in the 90s, kind of like a Generation X kind of author.
What did he write?
Well, his most famous book was Vert, which is about the drug culture. He was kind of very much a part of the cyberpunk movement, and
cool.
kind of becoming complacent, and that there are drugs that are provided by the government to make the people complacent. And in a sense, I feel that happens today with the government kind of, or I don't know, culture overall, kind of pressing students or kids to get more involved on apps or on Facebook, social media, so that they don't have to care or get involved in what's going on in the world, so that the powers that be might be more easily control us.
Yeah, it's apps, and it's also pharmaceuticals. I mean, it's happening. Mm-hmm. It's happening. And of course, you can't control any of that. Everyone thinks all this stuff, all these things are Band-Aids, and you just keep on mixing chemicals like mad scientists and handing them out to the public, and that's a recipe for disaster.
So, why the comic book form, or I don't know, is it would you call it a graphic novel, or is it
yeah,
why choose that form instead of maybe trying to make a movie or a TV show or write a book?
Right. I've always been a fan of comic books, and it's just a joy for me to do it. Of course, I always want to reverse engineer things into film and movies. And I wrote this graphic novel. My first graphic novel series is called Moon Lake, and that was inspired by a movie I made with my friends called Hysterical Psycho, and that's my homage to Twilight Zone and all things creepy and fun, and that's my fun, heavy metal style anthology. And I always try to. Wait, what was the question?
Well, the question was why the graphic novel or comic books as the art form of choice here.
Yeah, I think that nowadays there's a certain golden age of comics, like a resurgence of. There's this incredible content out there. A tremendous amount of the economy is based on, these movies that are based on comic books. So you'd be silly not to. There's something about that is very important if you're a creator. If you make a comic book, you own that. I mean, that's yours, and you can, no one can ever take that away from you, and it makes the selling process a lot easier for you. Mm-hmm. As opposed to just having a script or an idea. Once you have a tangible thing in your hand, then you're the creator, and your name will be the creator on a TV show and a film after that. That's just how it works. And so it's really important, I think, for people to own their projects. That's one thing, and then another thing is, if you like movies and making movies, which I do, and television and all that stuff, basically learning how to do comic books is very glorified filmmaking. You're making a shot list. It's basically storyboards, and so it goes hand in hand. It really is. It helps you get prepared for the other media, the other genres of art that it can extend into, and and I just love it. I used to make comics when I was a little kid. I used to draw them, and then when I realized I wasn't the best standard of penciler, I went to writing it because I just love it. And I don't know. I do all sorts of writing. Mm-hmm. I write films and TV scripts and plays, and I've never done a novel. That's maybe later on I'll do something like that. But right now I'm loving the whole graphic novel genre.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Alan Moore did say that it was the perfect art form once upon a time. So
yeah,
because I think I talked to my students about that also a lot of, because there's so many things you can do in a graphic novel or in a comic book that you can't do in any form. You can bounce between images and text and getting into everybody's mind and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, inner narration, and it's hard to do that well in film. Man, there's a lot of great stuff out there too for inspiration. There's just, the content is really excellent, and so
yeah,
it's just a great source of entertainment. Obviously, they're looking to comic books to make 90% of the material out there.
Yeah, I was thinking about that because it feels like in recent years there's been, as you said, there's been a resurgence in comics, and I like comics too. I love comics actually, and I feel like the past 10 to 15 years I've been going further away from your garden variety superhero comics, even though I still read Batman, but I tend to look more to to other types of stories.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And it seems to be, and I think that a lot of people kind of shy away from comics because that's what they think of superheroes in capes with special powers, but they don't take the opportunity to read something like Watchmen or From Hell that are telling completely different stories.
Yeah, they have. It ain't just Marvel and DC anymore. There's so many. Image, has become a real powerful entity in the comic book world. That started out as independent and has emerged as a big force. And there's all sorts of new titles out there. I got into one of the first independent books I ever got into was 100 Bullets. I don't know if you know that one.
Yeah,
That's like one of my favorites. That's noir. But there's also stuff like East of West. Have you read that?
Yeah. That's that's Hickman, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Saga. These are three titles that should be TV shows. They should be films. I don't know why they're not. Hopefully they're in development. But they're that good. I read Saga. I'm a dad. I got two little girls, and reading Saga, there's no other book out there where I'll end the book and I'll end a chapter and just be weeping.
No.
Wiping away tears in public and stuff. It's that good, and I strongly recommend people go out and try some of these titles. You'll be pleasantly surprised. It's not just capes and tights anymore. And there's a tremendous. If you read another great title is Invincible. I started getting into that, and that's basically, John Hughes meets Superman and Superboy. What is that relationship like? And it's a comment on the superhero world. The Boys.
Yeah.
The
Boys. I love The Boys.
Oh, shit. The Boys is another thing where it's a comment on the superhero world in a great way. It's just a dark comedic look at that world about, these are all titles that are off the beaten track, that have become, really big books that rival the Batmans and Superman.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned The Boys because Preacher was one of my first introductions to this is what a comic book can be. That I had no idea.
That book. I got Glenn Fabry for the cover for Volume 0. So that just alone, that guy made a big impression on me. The Preacher is I don't know if anyone's ever read it. They made a TV show. I haven't watched it, but that book.
I've seen the first episode, and I can't say that I was too. It wasn't my idea of what Preacher was, I guess.
It's hard to live up to it, man.
Yeah,
You just kind of want to do exactly what's on the page.
Exactly.
That good, I couldn't get into The Walking Dead because I was like, it's got to be black and white. I can't watch it. But the Preacher, that was reading that was one of my favorite movies, Wild at Heart. It was like Wild at Heart, meets The Lost Boys or something. It was just such a delicious combination.
I know. But I think that what's interesting with Preacher is that it also, even if there's a lot of violence in it and a lot of people, my wife never cared for Preacher just because of the graphic nature of it. But it also tells a different story. There's a completely different depth to it, and Ennis just knows his stuff when it comes to religion and that whole aspect of it. And I think that's what's needed when it comes to tell a story of that kind, that it needs that depth as well. Like with The Boys, he's talking about what would happen if superheroes were allowed to run rampant, if they existed and they could do whatever they wanted. what would the world look like?
And it needs to have a sense of humor, which both of them do.
Yeah.
You know, that dark, cheeky sense of humor, which helps you swallow all the brain matter, you know, all that blood and guts and stuff.
Well, if we want to go back to Brooklyn Gladiator, what has been the toughest thing about creating this
It's
story?
hard. It's hard to bring your ideas to fruition. You know, if you want to find a good artist, everything takes money and time, and you're relying on artists who, you know, it's alchemy. You really, it's like any other creative endeavor when you're relying on all these different forces to come together to make magic for you. It's like making a film or something. So it's painstaking. It's like you're giving birth to this thing, and hopefully it does well. You know, it's epic. You know, it's something that I've been working on since early 2000. So the fact that it's coming out, the fact that we're talking about it, you know, I've already won as far as independent comics go. But I have high hopes for it. It's become my Star Wars. Like since I've been working on it since, I guess, over the last fucking 18 years. Holy shit! I've written prequels and sidequels, and it's become this, like, it's basically my Star Wars. So I hope that I'm able to. My plan is to put out one volume of Brooklyn Gladiator every year, and more so if I have the money.
Yeah.
But you know, that's my plan. I really want to, and then turn it into TV, film. I got big ideas for this stuff. I hope people dig it.
Yeah. So, Brooklyn Gladiator Volume 0, that's the one that's coming out on April 11th, correct?
Yeah.
And then, so what's the next step after that? Is there going to be, because the preview I read was, you know, I don't know if that was the whole thing or if that was just like, if that was whole of 0, or what can we expect?
Volume zero is exactly that. It's usually what I've, in my experience, the volume 0 is like you're being introduced to the universe. It's the preview of it's a taste of the universe. And so what you're getting is about 60 pages of story, and then another 40 pages of art, design work, how we put this thing together, basically the nuts and bolts of this universe. And then there are a sneak peek of Volume 1, which I have Simon Beasley doing the art for. I don't know if you saw that. But I'm a huge, people like Glenn Fabry, Simon Beasley, these are guys who I grew up loving, and to get to work with them now, it's just like a dream come true. And so Volume 1 is supposed to be out this time next year.
Okay.
And hopefully I'm going to put out a volume every spring. And hopefully more so, like I said, if things go well, knock on wood.
Yeah.
With the brand, I got a lot of big ideas for it. So that's what's next for that, for Brooklyn Gladiator. And then I got another book, Moon Lake Omnibus, which Chapterhouse is putting out as well. It's going to be this huge book of Volume 1 and Volume 2 of my graphic novel Moon Lake, and like another 150 pages of new material. So that comes out in October around Halloween, so I'm excited about that one. And hopefully there'll be some crossover with Brooklyn Gladiator and Moon Lake, and that's where the universe is headed, in my little sci-fi fantasy universe.
Well, I mean, it feels to me it feels like it must be nice to have Chapterhouse behind you, because I was actually introduced to Chapterhouse just actually quite recently, probably a year, maybe 2 years ago, when I heard of Captain Canuck and that they were bringing him back. And since then, I've been, very excited about following some of the titles. Phantoma, for instance, is an old favorite of mine when it comes to female heroes. Oh. So I was kind of interested to see what they were doing, the new kind of take on that story.
They're making a lot of great fun changes in the recent years.
Yeah.
Like really recently, the Captain Canuck is awesome, and they're revamping him, and they were very Canadian mindset now, which is great. Moon Lake, takes place in near Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Brooklyn Gladiator, John Miller is from Toronto, and he's getting out of New York and trying to get back home. So this spoke to them, on a Canadian level. But my introduction to them was Jay Baruchel, who's a buddy of mine, acted with him in Fanboys.
Yeah.
And I've been, we're both geeks, and I've been throwing this idea, the Brooklyn Gladiator idea, at him over the years. He's been throwing ideas at me, and we're going to be collaborating on stuff. And so recently he said, "Hey, I'm coming on board with Chapterhouse. I'm investing a lot of time and money." And they said that, "Do you have any ideas, and do you have any friends who have cool ideas?" And he said, "Dan, you're like one of the first people I thought of, and what's going on with Brooklyn Gladiator?" So yes, I mean, that was amazing of Jay to bring me on board, and they're obviously it's called Brooklyn Gladiator, so it's a story that takes place starting in America. So they're broadening their horizons, and I think that they're really putting out stuff I'm seeing on the shelves that is really competitive.
Yeah.
And really, really delightful stuff. And I'm excited to be a part of it, of this next level of growth here. I'm blessed to have Jay, be my buddy and open the door for me. I hope that Brooklyn Gladiator does well for him and Moon Lake, and I hope that we just continue putting out books until the end of time, which might be sooner than later.
Well, if your predictions are correct, I guess that might be.
Yeah.
But but I think it could be a really like a centerpiece title, kind of like how the Hellblazer and Preacher was for Vertigo, or Saga has been for their brand, or even other. I think there are several smaller companies popping up now, like Aftershock Comics and stuff like that, and they have like one central kind of character or figure that they base everything around. And,
right.
And I think Chapterhouse seems to be, they're willing to be edgy enough for Brooklyn Gladiator, where maybe the creativity might have been stifled with another company. I don't know.
Yeah, they were. They basically looked at the preview book and said, "We want to print. We want to print this, and we love this. We love it as is." And so I was like, "This is the best case scenario. You don't want a lot of cooks in the kitchen when it comes to, something that is like your baby."
No, absolutely.
And I think they recognized that. They were like, "This is some cool stuff," and they were really excited about it. So I'm really excited about it. Yeah, I think you're right, man. I think that there were a lot of rules and regulations, definitely, when I was pitching to other people, like they needed more, they needed more chapters, they needed to see the volume 1. They needed to, and they weren't willing to take the risk, and these guys are, and hopefully it'll pay off. I'm excited.
That sounds good. Well, I think our time here is basically up, and I'd like to thank you for taking your time to talk to us. And I hope what I've seen in Brooklyn Gladiator, I really would like to see a lot more, and I think it could go very far.
Well, thank you, brother, from your lips to God's ears. I appreciate that, man. That's a lovely thing to say. I hope you're right, man.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll definitely be looking out for coming copies. Moon Lake, is anything of Moon Lake available now, or is that all just waiting?
You can Moon Lake. I originally did the first 2 volumes I did with Archaea.
Okay.
And then and then they got swallowed up by Boom. And that became kind of like a dead end because a lot of the Archaea titles were pushed to the back burner. So I was looking for someone to bring Moon Lake to, and that's a hard sell. It's already been published. It's already been printed, and I said, I am offering like 150 pages of new material along with it. And that really spoke to Chapterhouse because they wanted to, they wanted a big, juicy book to work with as they were putting new stuff out on the shelves. And this is going to be that, man. But to answer your question, you can go on Amazon. I'm sure there are some volume 1s and volume 2s out there still floating around. And I'm going to be at different Comic-Cons, definitely in San Diego. I'm going to be at WonderCon. I'm going to be at a bunch of different events because of press for Fantastic Beasts 2.
Yeah.
So I'll have books there as well if you see me there. That's the way to get it as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Archaea. It seems like they've been putting out a lot of like Jim Henson stuff lately. I was reading Dark Crystal, the sequel to Dark Crystal, and now there's a sequel to Labyrinth coming out. So it seems like they're pushing a little bit more.
No, they love Jim Henson. They were it's Boom now. I guess Archaea is part of Boom. So titles like Jim Henson, they're definitely pushing like crazy, But my little Moon Lake was kind of pushed to the back burner. They suddenly had a lot more to deal with when Boom came on board. So but yeah, man, when I was still over at Archaea and Boom, they were putting out these Dark Crystal graphic novels. Oh my God! And we got to take home free stuff, like conventions and stuff.
Yeah.
I would always. Oh, those are beautiful books. Alex Shankman.
Yeah, they're really beautiful stuff.
Yeah, he's the artist for those, and he came on and did work for me on Moon Lake, and he's a great artist.
Yeah.
That was one thing that was really brilliant about Archaea was they because I was doing an anthology, they really introduced me to so many amazing, different, eclectic artists, and it has since helped me as I've gone along to find and other artists for my new project and projects, and there's just a great community out there. So many talented people. Yeah, man. Do you know Dark Crystal? I just saw it in the movie theaters. For the last time I saw it on the big screen, I was like 5 years old. It freaked me out, and I guess it's the 35th anniversary.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and I saw it on the big screen recently, and it was amazing. It was just like, yeah, and I couldn't believe, like, he. It's one thing to do like the Muppet Show, you know, and dancing Muppets, but this, you watch this and you're like, oh my God, they got the rhythms.
Yeah, no,
of a jungle, you know. It's like the feeling of a forest where the little puppet bugs floating by and flowers opening and closing to the sunrise. You know, it was just like, what? And they did that in like the early 80s, like, or, you know, it was just a masterpiece of, you know, astonishing.
Yeah. No, yeah, because I think I remember my dad, I think one of the first times my dad went to the video store and rented a movie. He rented one of those movie boxes because we didn't have a VCR at home. Like what kind of like it came in a briefcase. You rented the video player, the VCR from the from the video rental store, and he came home with that, and he had like one movie that he had rented for him and my mom, a grown-up movie, and then it was The Dark Crystal, and it blew my mind. I don't think I was ever the same after that. So
I saw, when I was that was intense, man. Fizzgig.
Yeah, actually, my cat's name is Fizzgig.
No way.
Because of that. So it's been a big influence on my life and actually my wife's life too. So.
Oh my God, that little
yeah, that little thing.
Puppy munchkin. It was so. I remember. I'll tell you the story and then I got to run. But, I think it was one of the first. I think it was probably the first movie I ever saw, which can give you a clue in the movie theaters. So I was 5. I was standing. I went with my grandfather, and I was standing on the seat, standing on it. Okay, and I was gripping the back of the seat in front of me, right, and probably just breathing on the back of the person's head who was sitting in front of me, and just watching like it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. And when Fizzgig popped out of that hole, I flew back in my seat and hit the back of the seat and slid down. And I just remember just being like, just breathing, just being like, and looking up at my grandfather, and my grandfather looking down at me and just laughing his ass off at me. And that can give you just a sense of like the kind of mind that you're working with here. It's like that was the first movie I saw, and that moment is ingrained in my mind, man.
Yeah.
I will never forget that, the fear and exhilaration and the I can't look away when I have to. You know, it's like you know, what intense life-changing events. Yes. Your cat. I'm glad your cat is named Fizzgig.
I'll let my wife know. Well, Dan, thank you very much for taking the time.
Sure, man.
And I just have appreciated Brooklyn Gladiator a lot, and I'm looking forward to what the future holds.
Cool, man. Check out my podcast. It's called the Dan Fogler 4D Experience Podcast.
We'll do that.
Yeah, man, it's fun. It's really fun.
Okay.
All right, this was a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Likewise. Well, you have a good day.
Okay, you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, that was a fun interview. Dan Fogler, a great guy. Check out his forthcoming publication, Brooklyn Gladiator. Check out Chapterhouse Comics, the publisher that is publishing Brooklyn Gladiator. And also check out his the reprint of his Moon Lake graphic novel. Should be fun. I would like to thank Dan Fogler for taking the time to talk to us. I'd like to thank Chapterhouse Comics for hooking it up. I would also like to thank Disfigure from No Copyright Sounds for the music. Yeah, Follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram. All that good stuff. You can find that in the notes of this show. We are on Stitcher and SoundCloud as well as YouTube. So until next time, my name is C. Mary Holtman. This has been The Guild.